You want to know when I became untouchable? When I stopped answering my phone for 3 days. Not because I was busy, not because I was depressed, but because I finally understood what happens when you remove yourself from the equation completely, when you become a ghost while still breathing. My phone logged 47 missed calls, 132 unread messages, each one more desperate than the last. First came confusion, then anger, then panic. By day 3, people were showing up at my door, banging, pleading, demanding to know if I was alive. I was sitting right there, 3 feet from the door, listening to them lose their minds because I chose silence. And that's when I saw it. The truth nobody wants you to know. Your availability is a drug, and everyone around you is addicted. They don't need you. They need their fix. They need to know you'll answer, that you'll react, that you'll play your role in their psychodrama. But what happens when the dealer disappears? Let me tell you exactly what happens, because I documented everything. Hour 1, 3 texts from my ex, casual, testing the waters. Hey, you up? The kind of message that used to make me type paragraphs, explaining myself, justifying my existence. This time, nothing. Hour 4, my boss. Need to discuss something urgent. Urgent meant he needed validation for a decision he'd already made. Urgent meant he wanted me to absorb his anxiety. I let it sit there, unread. Hour 12, my mother. 7 calls, each voicemail longer than the last. Her voice shifting from concerned to offended. How dare I not be instantly available? How dare I have boundaries with the woman who gave me life? Day 2, the real breakdown started. Friends I hadn't heard from in months suddenly needed me, suddenly remembered I existed, but only because my absence created a void, a disturbance in their comfortable reality where I was always on call, always ready to listen, always willing to bleed my energy into their wounds. Sarah sent 19 messages, started with, "Are you mad at me?" Ended with, "I'm calling the police." All because I didn't heart react her Instagram story. But here's the sick part. I felt powerful. For the first time in my life, I felt my own weight. Not the weight of carrying everyone else, but the gravitational pull of my own existence when I stopped orbiting around others. Carl Jung wrote about this, called it the reclamation of projections. See, when you're always available, people don't see you. They see a mirror, a surface to reflect their needs, their fears, their desires. You become a supporting character in everyone else's movie. But when you vanish, when you stop playing the role, their projections have nowhere to land. They're forced to see the void where you used to dance for them. And that void terrifies them more than death. By day 3, the messages changed. No longer asking if I was okay. Now they were confessing, admitting things, apologizing for old wounds. My ex wrote a novel about how he'd taken me for granted. My boss left a voicemail saying he realized he'd been dumping his stress on me for years. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared that the emotional gas station had closed, that their favorite drug had been pulled from the market, that they might have to actually feel their own feelings without me there to process them. But the real revelation came when I finally turned my phone back on, when I finally opened my door, when I finally returned to the world. Nobody asked where I'd been. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just wanted to know one thing. Was I back? Was I available again? Could they return to their regular programming of using me as an emotional dumpster? That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I smiled, nodded, told them yes, I was back. But I wasn't. I never would be again. Because once you see the strings, you can't unsee them. Once you feel the drain of being everyone's emotional vampire food, you can't unfeel it. Once you know your worth isn't in your availability, but in your absence, everything changes. The first person to break was Marcus, my best friend of 15 years. Took him exactly 6 days after my return to show his true face. "You've changed," he said, staring at me across the table. "You're different. Cold." I hadn't changed. I just stopped bleeding for him, stopped responding to his 2 a.m. crisis calls, stopped dropping everything when his latest relationship exploded. And that difference, that coldness, that was just me with boundaries, me without the mask. He couldn't handle it. "You used to care," he said. "You used to be there. Used to be there. Like I was a location, a service, a 24-hour emotional convenience store that suddenly started closing at reasonable hours." I took a sip of coffee, let the silence stretch, watched him squirm in the discomfort of not being immediately validated. His leg bounced, his fingers tapped. His whole body screamed for me to fill the void, to apologize, to explain, to return to my role as his unpaid therapist. Instead, I said 4 words that destroyed him. "That's not my problem." You should have seen his face. Like I'd slapped him with reality, because for 15 years, his problems had been my problems. His pain had been my emergency. His chaos had been my responsibility to fix. But Jung was right about something crucial. We don't help people by carrying their shadow. We enable them. We become accomplices to their refusal to grow. And worse, we disappear in the process. Marcus left that coffee shop and never called again. 15 years of friendship ended because I stopped being consumed by his consumption. Then came Jennifer, my sister, the family favorite, the one who could do no wrong except everything she did was wrong, and somehow I was always cleaning up the mess. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, mascara running, another crisis, another man who didn't understand her, another job that didn't appreciate her genius, another landlord who unreasonably expected rent. "I need to stay here for a few weeks," she announced. Not asked, announced, because that's what I was for. Being available, being the safety net, being the solution to problems she created and refused to solve. No. 1 word, 2 letters, the atomic bomb of boundaries. She laughed, then cried, then raged, called me selfish, heartless, reminded me of every time she'd been there for me. Except she hadn't. She'd been there for the version of me that served her, the brother who never said no, who never had needs, who existed to validate her victim narrative. "What happened to you?" she screamed. "You're like a stranger." No, I was finally familiar with myself, finally loyal to my own life force, finally understanding what Jung meant when he wrote about individuation. You can't become whole while you're torn into pieces for others to consume. But here's what nobody tells you about becoming unavailable. It's not just about saying no. It's about watching the entire architecture of your relationships collapse, because most of them weren't relationships. They were transactions, and you were always overpaying. The text messages started changing. People stopped asking, "How are you?" and started asking, "Are you mad at me?" They stopped sharing their lives and started demanding explanations for my boundaries. They stopped seeing me as human and revealed they'd always seen me as a resource. My phone became a museum of entitlement, each message a perfect display of how people react when their favorite toy develops free will, when their emotional support animal stops performing, when the mirror they've been staring into suddenly shows them their real face. But something else started happening, something I didn't expect. New people appeared, different people People who didn't need me to be available, who didn't drain my energy, who could sit in silence without panicking, who had their own boundaries and respected mine. They were rare, maybe 1 in 50, but they were real, and they were teaching me something critical. The breaking point came at my father's funeral. Standing there, watching them lower him into the ground, I realized something that made me want to scream. He died available, died with his phone in his hand, died responding to someone else's emergency while his heart gave out from 40 years of carrying everyone but himself. The last text he ever sent was, "I'll be right there." He was always right there, for everyone, except himself, except us. His family got the exhausted leftovers of a man who gave his prime energy to strangers who forgot his name the moment he stopped being useful. At the reception, I watched his colleagues speak. Beautiful words about how he never said no, how he always helped, how he was always there. They praised his availability like it was holy, like it was the highest virtue a man could have. But I knew the truth. Every yes he gave them was a no to himself. Every moment of availability was a moment stolen from his own life. He died a hero to people who wouldn't remember him in 6 months, and a stranger to the family who'd remember him forever. That night, I made a decision. Not a plan, not a goal, a decision. I would become radically unavailable, not cruel, not heartless, but sovereign over my own existence. I started with work, turned off email notifications, set an auto-response. I checked messages twice daily at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. The panic was immediate. Colleagues acted like I'd announced my own death. My boss called it unprofessional. I called it sustainable. Within 2 weeks, something strange happened. People started respecting my time, started being clearer in their communications, started solving their own problems instead of using me as their first resort. My productivity doubled. My stress halved. My value skyrocketed. Then came the personal relationships. I stopped responding immediately to texts, started taking days to reply. Sometimes didn't reply at all if the message didn't require a response. The fragile connections evaporated. The energy vampires found new sources. The crisis addicts found new dealers. But the real ones, they adapted. They understood. They started matching my energy. Our conversations became deeper, less frequent but more meaningful. Quality replaced quantity. Depth replaced surface. My mother called it selfish, said I was becoming just like my father's brother, the one who moved to Montana and only called on Christmas, the one who died alone. He died free, I told her. Dad died surrounded and empty. Which death would you choose? She hung up, didn't speak to me for 3 months. And in those 3 months, I discovered something that changed everything. Peace. Real peace. Not the temporary relief between crises. Not the exhausted collapse after serving everyone else. But the deep, sustainable peace of someone who owns their own energy. Who chooses where it flows. Who refuses to be a battery for other people's lives. Jung called this the transcendent function. The point where opposing forces integrate, where you stop being split between who you are and who others need you to be, where you become whole by refusing to be torn apart. People ask me if I'm lonely, if I miss the constant connection, the perpetual availability, the feeling of being needed. I tell them the truth. I was lonelier when I was available to everyone. Because I was never available to myself. I was surrounded and abandoned, connected and invisible, needed and worthless. Now, I'm alone, but complete. unavailable but present, distant but real. And those who can't handle this version of me, they never loved me. They loved my usefulness, my availability, my willingness to disappear so they could feel seen. Your unavailability isn't cruel. It's the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them, because it forces everyone to grow, to stand on their own, to stop using others as crutches. When you stop being available, everything changes, starting with you.